The city of Flowery Branch, a small town in Hall County, Georgia, that has remained relatively untouched by the problems of the world. But it's continually growing, and as more people move through and move in, they are discovering what many feel is a disturbing sign. Multiple signs, actually, leading down a 1.5-mile stretch named Jim Crow Road.
I was in shock. Like, wait a minute, hold up, double take. Is that what I think? Honey, I think we were driving on McEver coming from church on a nice, beautiful Sunday, and we saw the name. And, there are a lot of different emotions that happen when you see something like that, because then you begin to think about the city that's endorsing what we perceived was the meaning behind that particular name. So there are a lot of different thoughts that you're thinking about that is disturbing, discriminative, and it causes you to have conversations after that, driving down the road. Okay, da-da-da. So that was my first reaction. I was very shocked.
I don't know what the board or the council was thinking when they decided to do that, but it's not acceptable, and they should make every effort to change it.
Hall County in northeast Georgia was created in 1818 from Native American lands and named for Lyman Hall, signer of the Declaration of Independence and Georgia's governor from 1783 to 1784. Hall was the 45th Georgia county to be created. Its seat of government, Gainesville, was incorporated in 1821. Flowery Branch is located in Hall County on the shores of Lake Lanier. Once the site of an early trading post, Flowery Branch was originally called Anagaluski, a Cherokee word that translates as flowers on the branch. Flowery Branch is unique because of its name. It's the only town in the world called Flowery Branch. A few white settlers lived in the area before 1874, the year the town was officially founded as a railroad stop on the newly completed Atlanta to Charlotte, North Carolina section of the Atlanta-Richmond Airline, later known as Norfolk Southern. The town became the center of the Northeast Georgia cotton market, and as it grew, it attracted new businesses, including the furniture and leather industries. By the turn of the 20th century, the town's most prosperous years, thousands of bales of cotton and crates full of locally manufactured furniture were shipped annually from the Flowery Branch Depot. The decline of the cotton market in the 1920s signaled the end of the town's importance in the region, and Flowery Branch went into a period of decline. The damming of the Chattahoochee River in the mid-1950s, flooding 38,000 acres, created Lake Lanier, which brings 10 million visitors each year to the area. 21st century Hall County is largely the product of Lake Lanier's influence. According to the most recent census data, Flowery Branch is one of the fastest growing cities in Georgia, with a population of just over 8,500. It has also been listed as one of the whitest cities in Georgia, with just over 85% white, 8% black, with the remaining percentage made up by Hispanic, Asian, and mixed races. Not too far from downtown Flowery Branch and intersecting a major thoroughfare from Gainesville to Beaufort is a road named Jim Crow. Although the road was named after a local resident, it is widely assumed throughout the area as a road depicting a darker meaning, one of segregation and white supremacy.
Most people think that the name comes from the Jim Crow laws. However, it does not. It comes from a very respected and appreciated family from this community. They may share the same name, but the way we look at the name Jim Crow Road is not the same as the law. We never even connected the two.
Jim Crow laws were state and local laws that enforced racial segregation in the United States. These laws were enacted in the late 19th century to disenfranchise and remove political and economic gains made by Black people during the Reconstruction period. The Jim Crow laws were enforced until 1965. The actual origin of the Jim Crow character has been lost to legend. One story claims the persona was a theater character by Thomas Dartmouth, Daddy Rice, and a racist depiction of African Americans and their culture.
Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about I jump Jim Crow.
His imitation was based on that of a black slave whose owner was a Mr. Crow that he had seen on his travels throughout the southern United States. Rice's famous stage persona, beginning in the 1830s, eventually lent its name to a generalized negative and stereotypical view of black people. The shows peaked in the 1850s, and after Rice's death in 1860, interest in them faded.
So when did you learn about Jim Crow laws?
Recently, just because I didn't, racism's not been part of my vocabulary, and so I didn't, it wasn't something, I grew up in a real diverse area of Norcross and Beaufort and Flowery Branch and Swanee, and I don't see in color. So the name of the Jim Crow law, as it is, as it stands for as a condemned today, is not something I've ever thought about. So it's been very recent, and it's become important just in this last months, possibly year.
And it was not something that was taught in any of the schools that you went?
If it were, I don't recall. I don't believe that it was. I don't recall that it was. No, I can't say that it was.
Some of the most common laws included restrictions on voting rights, bans on interracial relationships, and clauses that allowed businesses to separate their black and white clientele. The segregationist philosophy of separate but equal was later upheld in the famous 1896 Supreme Court decision Plessy v. Ferguson, in which the court ruled that the state of Louisiana had the right to require different railroad cars for black and white passengers. This decision would eventually lead to widespread adoption of segregated restaurants, public bathrooms, water fountains, and other facilities. The United States military was already segregated, and President Woodrow Wilson, a Southern Democrat, initiated the segregation of federal workplaces in 1913. In 1954, state-sponsored segregation of public schools was declared unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court under Chief Justice Earl Warren in the landmark case Brown v. Board of Education. In some states, it took many years to implement this decision. Generally, the remaining Jim Crow laws were overruled by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Many scholars would argue that Jim Crow's legacy would continue to endure.
As a child, Jim Crow Road was just Jim Crow Road. It was a name of a street, name of a road. Didn't even really think anything about it. In fact, when I was a child, I thought it was named after my uncle, whose name was James Crow, but not the same person.
So in Flowery Branch, the road names, hence Jim Crow, is named after somebody who lived here for years, who, didn't have anything to do with what everybody thinks that it means.
The property at the end of this road was owned by a man, known as Jim by his family and friends. He was born Glenn Charters Crow in Cumming, Forsyth County, Georgia in 1903 to a John Anderson and Mary Molly Crow. His mother died in 1918, and according to the 1920 census record, Jim was living with his father, Aunt Octavia, and 6 other siblings on their family farm in Flowery Branch, Georgia at the age of 16. In 1923, Jim married his wife, Edith Kimball Crow, in Hall County, and a 1930 census record listed their home as being Hog Mountain, Gwinnett, Georgia, having 3 children at the time. His father, John, died in 1940, and the 1940 census record showed Jim, age 37, living with his wife and now 4 children on his father's farm in Flowery Branch, Hall County, listed as being on Old Federal Road. And there is where he remained, raising his family, a total of 5 children, 4 sons and 1 daughter, until his death in 1989. He was 86 years old. Property deed records located at the Hall County Courthouse Annex Office describe the several acres that Mr. Crow owned and sold, including land plots 101, 102, and 108, located at the furthest point of the road before ending at Lake Lanier. A 1941 deed showed the Crow farm property consisting of a cider and syrup mill, livestock, corn, and cotton.
You know, my understanding is he was good with whites, good with blacks. He was well liked across the board. Mm-hmm. So for that reason, I would think if that was my family member, if that was my name, my family member, I would want whatever, whether it's a memorial or a sign or whatever, to represent who he is, not what that name represents in our culture today.
In July of 2019, a petition was started by a Flowery Branch resident, Maggie Hott, on change.org to change the name of Jim Crow Road. It has been signed by over 8,000 people.
My first impression, I automatically thought that was one way for a community to be very open about their views on what people they wanted in their community and what people they might not.
My first impression of Jim Crow Road was, I had no impression because I didn't know it was Jim Crow until I moved into the house. And it didn't really faze me. I didn't think about it until people in my family sort of were like, really, you living on Jim Crow Road? But I didn't, it was just the name of the street.
My daughter had invited someone to come with her to our place. And she was a black gal. Yeah, and she said, your parents, Jim Crow Road said, your parents hate blacks, don't they?
Just because of the name?
Yeah, just because of the name, yeah.
I think that the road names within our community should really grow and evolve with our culture and our values. So if you come across a road, such as our Jim Crow Road, that maybe doesn't speak to the current values that we're holding, I don't think there's anything wrong with just questioning. Should this be updated? Should it be changed? Is it appropriate? Does it represent us in our community the way we want strangers, newcomers to our community to see us?
In June of 2020, a counter petition on change.org was started by Stephanie Bennett to keep the road name the same.
First time I saw it was passing by it, I saw Jim Crow. I'm not a person of color, so I'm not personally affected by it, but I made the same misunderstanding. I think that the problem that you have with that point of view is that there's not somebody in the car with them to clear up the misunderstanding, you know. And so that assumption will last as long as until they meet somebody that can clear it up for them, you know, if they choose to have that conversation. I don't know why anybody would.
Well, I would think that it could probably be a really good conversation piece if, somebody wouldn't get their butt hurt about it before they ever know what it really means.
I don't think it's something that's going to come up very often unless it's just in somebody saying, hey, where do you live? And you go, I live on Jim Crow Road. And they're, oh, well, who's that named after? Well, Jim Crow, but not the one you're thinking. It's we're so used to it being there that we don't even think about it. It doesn't start a conversation with us.
and all the problems come from outside of Flowery Branch. All the complaints are coming from like Atlanta and different states, not coming from us.
Or transplants.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's where you get a lot of misconceptions is people move here and then they don't understand what it's about. They think that it's something racial, and it's not. It's just a man.
Yeah. But it's just a road.
In a 2015 interview with Jeremy Jones of local news channel CBS 46, Jim Crow's grandson, Randy Crow, stated that his grandfather was a humble man and would help everybody. The name on the cemetery marker is Glenn C. Crow. He also was called GC on occasion, but an aunt started calling him Jimmy when he was little, and that nickname stuck.
The gravestone, if I'm not mistaken, was donated by a church. It wasn't even done with the family. The family didn't pay for it, so they were just being nice, and I guess they wanted to put his legal name on it. If I'm not mistaken, I mean that's what I know. He was Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was not GC, or is that what they said? GC. It was not. That's not him.
No.
He didn't go by that.
He didn't go by that.
Randy Crow stated in his interview with CBS 46 that because his grandfather owned much of the property on the road, he used his influence to get the road paved, and that the commissioners later named it after him. Maps located at the Hall County Library, dating 1895 through 1951, showed the road existing as a dirt road, but no early maps listed road names. A 1956 map still shows the road with no signage, but does list the road surface as being bituminous surface. In 1964, it was shown to be a medium-duty road, and the first map listing the road as Jim Crow Road appeared in 1970.
How long has it been Jim Crow Road?
As long as I've been here.
So.
And longer than you've been alive.
Yeah. So.
Longer than Stephanie's been alive.
I mean, we'll say at least 100 years. It's been Jim Crow Road for at least 100 years.
At least 56 years.
At least 56 years, because he's not yet 100.
Thank you.
But
leave well
it is
alone.
Just now a problem.
Yeah.
Many tax property cards from the 1940s through the 1960s showed the road listed as both Route 1 and as Old Federal Road, and at some point the road name was crossed out and the name Jim Crow written below. The planning department, where the order to change the road would have originated, had no records for this time period available to reference. A warranty deed from April 1960 showed the property located in land lot 100 along this road listed as Old Federal Road, and a road commissioner entry made reference to Jim Crow Road as early as July 1962. After reviewing Hall County Road Commissioner records from 1930 through 1990, no record was made of when the road name changed from Old Federal Road to Jim Crow Road or why. Unlike McEver Road, a road intersecting Jim Crow, which had a reference to a resolution to when and why it was named after Mr. R.H. McEver in September of 1964 for his contributions to the community. The only record located of Mr. Jim Crow's community contributions was in Mrs. Elizabeth Lott's book, The History of Flowery Branch, Georgia, 1874 to 1974, located at the Hall County Library. It recorded his involvement as one of 6 committee members in 1953 that helped to establish the Southern Bell telephone operation systems within the city of Flowery Branch.
One of the other questions that I keep hearing on Facebook is why now? Why are we making these changes now? My reply has been, why not now? It's not that these conversations are brand new. It's not that they've just started with any national event that's been going on. These conversations have been going on for a long time.
You have a Jim Crow Road in your community and you're not worried about it, then you live in a racist community. It was probably not completely fair, but maybe it was. Because it totally ignores the feelings of an entire race of people who don't ever want to be driving someplace and see a Jim Crow road.
Flowery Branch and Hall County do not have the same racial history as its neighbor across Lake Lanier of Cumming and Forsyth County. As told in the book by Patrick Phillips, Blood at the Root, A Racial Cleansing in America, the book describes how after a series of events, including the rape and murder of a young white woman by the name of May Crow, allegedly by 3 black men in 1912, that every one of Forsyth's African Americans was driven out of the county. 1910 census record of Forsyth County showed that its black residents accounted for about 10% of the total population. By the 1920 census, only 30 African Americans remained in the county. During the 1950s and 60s, there were no colored water fountains in the courthouse or whites-only diners in the county seat Cumming, because there was no black population to segregate. The county had become all white and continued to stay that way through the later part of the 20th century. In 1987, civil rights marches taking place in Cumming were met with angry white protesters and Klan members and received nationwide attention, including the involvement of the National Guard. As late as 2002, a statue honoring Hiram Parks Bell, a former Confederate congressman and lifelong defender of what he called white over black domination, was erected in front of Cumming City Hall. There the statue continues to stand in Cumming Square, just across from the county courthouse, the same square where Rob Edwards was lynched for his alleged involvement of the death of May Crow in 1912. The memorial to Bell and to white supremacy as he holds a copy of his book, Men and Things, which dehumanizes the black race as being barbarians.
My friends, they would not agree with that. Like, I don't think they should really have a statue if, you know, he's holding a book of calling another person barbarian. Like, it really doesn't matter. They don't really need to have that statue if that's what's going to remind people of.
35 years ago, there was that big hubbubaloo in Cumming about black people not being able to live there. There were black people that lived there. I mean, you're gonna always have black people. They've been there for so long that they're not even included. As a matter of fact, you can kind of look at them kind of like the white people. You know what I'm saying? Because they're just part of the norm. There will not be any challenges to this situation. There's not going to be any statements that made, regardless of whether they even feel about it or think about it.
According to Dr. James E. Dorsey's books, The History of Hall County, Georgia, Volumes 1 and 2, the spree of racial violence in Forsyth counties in 1912 resulted in a mass migration of black people to Gainesville and surrounding Hall counties. Hall County had not been a strong supporter of secession from the Union in 1861, since it was mostly comprised of yeoman farmers that owned relatively fewer slaves, but still more likely to have its residents forced to fight in the Civil War.
That Confederate flag is the battle flag of a place that said that you had to fight or we will kill you on sight. If they came into your house and you had an able-bodied man there that was not gone to war, he would be shot dead on sight. They were called the Armed Guard, and they were there to find every able-bodied person to fight the Union. The only people who did not have to fight was anyone who owned 10 or more slaves. If you owned 10 or more slaves, you did not have to go to fight the war. You could sit in your house, sip your coffee, eat your sugar, and enjoy your plantation. At that time, slavery was not legal in the North. It was only legal in the South. And less than 20% of the South's population of white people owned slaves. The other 80% lost their lives.
After the Civil War, blacks, along with whites in this area, faced a rather dismal prospect of finding gainful employment in a society that had been crippled by a long, protracted war effort.
The systemic racism it goes all the way back to 1865 and the whole idea of dividing this country and being able to keep the lower income white guy and the lower income black guy fighting one another.
There was also fear from the white men after the 15th Amendment to the Constitution gave freedmen the right to vote. Many white Georgians saw this as a direct threat to white supremacy that would lead to black control of the government. Largely because of this fear, a group firstly known in Georgia as the Night Riders developed in order to intimidate blacks and keep them from gaining any political power. Blacks continued to occupy the lowest rung on the social ladder, own little land or property, and continued to find themselves dependent on white society. At the same time, blacks did form their own churches after the war and developed close-knit social ties that allowed them to have some control over their existence.
All these people, all they ever wanted to do was to be okay. Okay? And you take the 40 acres and the mule that they promised us. Where were we going to get that acreage from? You got 100 square miles of farmland. You've got 10 farmers. Now, the reality is that 80 of those miles are owned by one dude. The other 9 own the rest. When they came in with that 40 acres and a mule, where do you think they was getting them 40 acres from? It wasn't from the one. It was from the 9. And all of these are small people. These are everyday people. With the equivalent today of small business owners, of lower and middle income people. And now they're being told that they've got to give up their possessions to share with these people because they didn't own slaves. See, the guy who owned the slave, the guy who got the 80, he ain't giving up nothing. Because what they've done is they've restructured the social and political structures to where he can fix it, to where he ain't got to give up nothing. They did.
Forsyth and Hall counties were separated by the Chattahoochee River in the early 1900s. Although the two counties were merely a crossing of a bridge from one another, Hall County property owners did not allow their black population to be completely driven out. A 1912 Gainesville News article reports the arrest of night riders by Hall County Sheriff William Crow after they had tried to force a black family living on white property owners' land 3 miles from Flowery Branch. According to Dorsey's book, this opposition to vigilante action was rooted in property rights and not the principles of liberty and freedom, as it gave other news examples of Sheriff Crow taking part in the intimidation and execution orders of black residents. It was openly accepted that blacks had a designated place in local society, primarily as a servant of menial labor or as entertainers. Early Hall County newspapers, including the Georgia Cracker, the Gainesville Eagle, and the Gainesville News, editorialized blacks as being lazy, ignorant, or criminals. Many news examples are given in Dorsey's book relating to the intimidation of the black population, including misrepresentation, destruction of property, and lynching. One image was of blacks as simple, happy-go-lucky, and often childlike. The other image was the black beast, the wild, emotional creature of hellish lusts, always ready to rape the virtuous white woman. Not only would judges hold blacks to a different standard than whites, but the press would often go to extremes to make blacks appear to be the embodiment of evil, and find them guilty in their news articles before the judicial process had been completed.
I don't think any cultural history should be changed at all. Jim Crow, the statue, the Confederate flag, that shouldn't be changed because some people feel offended. This situation, because there were slaves, took place 200 or 300 years ago. It's not this generation's fault that there were slaves and they were treated harshly. I mean, if anything, I should be threatened by them. Because they have a history of mugging people and living on welfare and raping white women and stuff like that. Everywhere they go, they make it a less attractive place to live. Everywhere they go, the property value goes down. You know.
And when you say they, what do you mean?
Well, the blacks. I mean, I don't need to sound prejudiced. This is a land of opportunity. If you don't move up in life, it's because you don't want to move up in life. You want to live in the ghetto. You want to make $100 a week to buy expensive Nikes and smoke pot and going around raping white women and going causing catastrophe, causing a scene everywhere you go. That's your prerogative. That's why people hate them. You make your own bed. You reap what you sow in life. Respect the police officers. You're not going to have any problem. I'm a minority. I'm black and I'm Hispanic. Okay? I've been stopped by cops.
Yeah. And why do you think you were pulled over in the first place?
Oh, so they usually pull off because of the traffic, or maybe because your light bulb is gone, or something like that sort. Nothing. I don't find it personal.
You don't think it's a racial profiling situation?
No. I don't have that type of mentality. They always have to look over my shoulder because somebody don't like me because I'm black or Hispanic. I just show them my license. Okay, no problem. Free to go. That's it. I don't have that problem because I respect people. But if you don't respect people and you're going around causing a scene and acting obnoxious and reprehensible, then yeah, you're going to have a lot of problems.
With Flowery Branch having a smaller population of under 500 up until 1940, they most likely received their news through Gainesville. Census records from the early 1900s for Flowery Branch show that most residents were farmers, probably sharecroppers, and had less than a 7th grade education. The black families living within the city borders remained relatively unchanged throughout this time. By 1940, census records listed 33 heads of black family households, with only 4 owning their own property. The message delivered in many local news articles reminded people of color that if they wanted to have a peaceful existence, they would behave in a way that yielded to a white supremacist ideology. And if they forgot their place, the Ku Klux Klan was there to remind them. In Georgia, the Klan gained strength in membership just before the United States entered World War I, largely in part to the popularity of the pro-Klan play and motion picture Birth of a Nation, which had played in Hall County just before the war. In the 1920s, the Klan exerted considerable power in the state, and at one point, the governor, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the State Superintendent of Education, the Mayor of Atlanta, and many other state officials were Klansmen or in some way connected to the order. Eugene Talmage, born in Forsyth County, was Georgia State Agricultural Commissioner from 1926 through 1930 and became governor in 1932. He appealed to rural Georgia by idolizing the small farmer and used the newspapers to promote his political views of white supremacy in the South. He died in 1946. Talmage's coffin, while lying in state at the Georgia Capitol, was decorated with a wreath reading Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. White supremacy flared in the 1950s as supporters of segregation rallied. Governor Hiram Talmage, who was elected by the state legislature after his father died in the governorship, strengthened Jim Crow laws, restricted the rights of black people to vote, and attempted to outlaw pro-civil rights groups like the NAACP. At its peak, Klan membership exceeded 4 million people nationwide. Newspapers from both Forsyth and Hall counties continue reporting on Klan activity throughout the late 20th century, with both favorable and unfavorable viewpoints. One story making national news was the cancellation of the Gainesville Christmas Parade in 1991 due to several organizations refusing to participate after Daniel Carver, Grand Dragon of the KKK, entered their Klan's float titled, "I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas."
I know that the Imperial Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan lived on Atlanta Highway up towards Oakwood. It had little statues of little black kids in the front yard. And everybody's going to tell you the same thing as everybody rode by there. And it was all fenced in. And it wasn't really like a fortress, but it gave you the feeling of stay out.
I am aware that the Klan was here at least as recently as my high school experience, 1995.
My mother-in-law was part of the Klan. She was an active member of the Klan. So I've heard a lot of stories from my wife and my sister-in-laws about the Klan. They didn't see the Klan as a bad thing. The Klan was basically a way for the community to police themselves.
Keep families together. That was what it was all about. And if they was running around on their family or not doing them right, that was what it was all about. The Klan now, it's on account of blacks, and that's wrong.
My mother-in-law would tell you that the Klan would not bother anybody that wasn't doing anything wrong. And she would also tell you that she did not have any problems with black people. She just felt that blacks and whites should not mix.
You know, I grew up in downtown Norcross, 2 blocks from Thrasher Park, where, you know, there were KKK meetings that happened there. And only one time I went and sat on a park bench and listened to these disgusting people that made a lot of noise, that just were so full of hate, and it was ridiculous. But it was an education.
Kind of don't want to say anything about that because some of my kinfolk was killed by some folks. They killed some people they killed some of my kinfolks, and they with a rock, and then who done it? They killed them.
With a majority Caucasian population since its founding, many residents of Hall County can't help but wonder if it was not accidental that a road named to honor Mr. Glenn Charters Crow, especially if done during the early 1960s, wasn't also assigned to keep the area white by indicating the white supremacist ideology that the term Jim Crow depicts.
And it means something to all of us when somebody comes in that is from, you know, another state or another area entirely and says, hey, I want to change this. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Back the train up a second, because you're not somebody that we're willing to even take stock in, because you haven't been here to know the history of this place. Flowery Branch has a long, long storied history of good, bad, and indifferent. And a lot of people get their feelings hurt just because it wasn't their idea.
It's not that anyone is trying to be unfair, but they just don't necessarily relate to the history the same way that we do. Those are conversations we have at the table or at home. Those are the things that we talk about. And so
we accept it as part of our lives. We have to tolerate living in certain aspects in certain parts of America. And in Hall County, for that matter, being so close to Forsyth County, and just being in the South. So we accepted it as just what it was stated for. I mean, it's there in big, bold letters.
What is your impression of a town that would have a road named Jim Crow?
I would think that town is really trying to remind me to stay in my place, to remind me that I'm black, to remind me that I'm less than, and at any given time, they see that.
You see, part of it goes back to our indoctrination and our conditioning. We don't want to rock the boat.
That fear governs our lives. We know at any given moment, you could be reduced.
So, being ADA, you know, is sort of a minority, you know, is people. I have a little bit broader perspective of it because I wasn't born this way. You know, I had a stroke 4 or 5 years ago. And so when I encounter people that assume something about me based on my appearance or based on my functionality or whatever, you know, I understand that it is a misunderstanding because I was once naive to a great many things, you know. So it is that same basic misunderstanding. I'm a little bit more accommodating of it than somebody who has never been on the other side, you know. But I can understand both sides.
But I never felt that people judge me by the color of my skin. And I know it sounds crazy, and I've tried to rethink it because I'm like, you look at me and you know I'm black, you know, but anything that I've tried to do, if I did it, I felt that I did it because I earned it. And if I didn't get it, I didn't think it was because it was the color of my skin, it was because I didn't work hard enough or it wasn't for me. And, you know, at the age I am, I guess that's something to say. Either people would say either she's stupid or she's naive.
I don't think Flowery Branch is a racist area on the surface. I think on the surface, we see our neighbors, we see our friends, and everybody is so cordial and friendly. I think when you look at the demographics of our neighborhood, you'll start to question why. If you do not see a mix of ethnicities when you frequent a restaurant, a grocery store, a clothing store, then you need to wonder, why are they not here? Because the one thing that we all see is when we're the only one.
I'd like to think that there was not really an awareness of what that name had come to represent, either due to the way the lessons were taught in school, you know, that there wasn't Google.
When they named that road, they knew. You can't live in the South and not know. You can't live in Hall County and not know. They knew what Jim Crow was. You could not know. This is the home of Talmage. This is Georgia. And if you don't know Governor Talmage and all of his campaign speeches, you would realize that Herman Talmage believed in Jim Crow. He believed in separate but equal. There's no question about that.
I don't think the commissioners even thought about it. Most people only deal and talk to themselves. And because of that way of conditioning, because of that thinking, when it comes to making decisions, most people don't think outside of themselves. So you got these group of people who don't think outside of themselves, having an idea that they have decided is a good idea, so why would they question it? So no, I don't think that they were black-hearted and said, yeah, we know that this has this, double entendre, innuendo, or whatever it is, and we're going to do it anyway. No, I don't think they did that. I don't think they considered it.
We can't forget, we are a small town. It's getting bigger, but we are a small town, and one voice makes a difference. One voice can get people talking about something that may or may not be good for all of us, but we shouldn't be afraid to hear people's ideas and consider other people's experiences and to see what makes the best sense for us here in Flowery Branch.
I think they need to leave well enough alone.
Yep, I think that I will be extremely disappointed with the council, the Flowery Branch City Council, if they bow down to the people and change this road name. Mm-hmm. It's definitely going to say that they're okay to be ran over. They're okay for other people to come in and just call the shots for them. Yeah. They're supposed to be the power be. Mm-hmm. So they should be the ones that make the decision. This is our town. You leave it alone. You don't like it, there's the door.
Yeah. Don't let it hit you where the good Lord splits you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing I'm going to throw out here, I see somebody signed up to speak on this, and it's been popular in social media. We've been dealing with it for years. We do have a road named Jim Crow in our city. It is 400 feet of it is in our city. Actually, 11,869 feet of it, or 96%, is in the county. The name of that road, I have felt for years, should be changed, and out of concern for the family and honoring that person that was a resident of this area for many years and did lots of good in the city, felt that we should honor him. But with everything going on in the world at this point, I feel that it's time to change that name, and all we can do is the 400 feet, which is from McKever Road to Radford Road there. And so I'm just letting the council know that at the next council meeting, which will be at July 2nd, we bring in a resolution forward to change our portion of that 400 feet to G.C. Crow Road. And that is because that is how he legally signed his checks and documents when he was alive. And Kathy Cooper, our South Commissioner, has spoken with their family, and the family does not want to see the name changed. However, if it were to be changed, that would be their wish, is that it would be changed to G.C. Crow. And so hopefully the council will support that, and we can get that changed on July 2nd. That is a major thoroughfare coming through our city. And so I just think it's time for that to happen. And I hope the council will support that on July 2nd. So,
whose opinion should the city or the county consider before making decisions to change the name of a road?
The residents on Jim Crow Road, as far as I'm concerned. That's who else has got a skin in the game. And if they want to change, if those people get to tell us to change our name, I'd like to talk about changing their names on their streets. Same thing. Turnabout's fair play as far as I'm concerned.
I think it should consider the people that live on the road. I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, we pay the taxes and we live on it, so I think they will at least give it a consideration.
I think that the family, because they still live here, that they should be a part of the process.
And how about those that say live on the road? Should they be consulted by the county or the city?
No, I don't think so. Well, you chose to live here, so what's the big deal? You could have lived somewhere else. So, no.
I think any municipality that's getting ready to make a change to the community should have a good amount of feedback from a broad cross-section of the community. I think that they should start by explaining the change, explaining the various standpoints for a change, making sure that the pathway of communication is very open. These changes should never be a surprise to someone. I think that if there's someone living on Jim Crow Road right now that does not know that the change is coming, I think that our leadership, our community leadership might have dropped the ball because we've got to communicate, right? If people are not surprised by something, they have time to work through their feelings, good and bad about it. And maybe when we solicit more feedback from our fellow neighbors, we can even do something better. We can make it even better than just changing the name.
It is not change that people do not like. It is the loss in change that people do not like. So anytime somebody is struggling with the change, all they got to do is get honest about what they're going to lose.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Got a couple things on the agenda tonight. The first one is Resolution 20-019, and that's the authorization to rename Jim Crow Road to G.C. Crow Road within the city limits of Flowery Branch. Mr. Andrew, you've got a couple slides on that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I've got a few slides that kind of put this area into context and kind of review.
One side of the road is Flowery Branch, but the other side is not, and so therefore the only part that we are discussing and we have control over, the authority to address, is that first 400 feet there coming off of McKever Road. And so that's all that this resolution would do, and that's all within our authority to do. So that's all we can do. Anyone wanting to affect the rest of that road, that would be a county commission discussion. And I would suggest talking to either Commissioner Higgins, the chairman, or Kathy Cooper, the Southpaw Commissioner. In my talks with the council members about this, I believe everyone is on board with this resolution. I did speak with Randy Crow, I guess the grandson of Mr. Crow, and he understands the unfortunate association of this name with the laws of this country back years ago. He
basically said he wants everyone to know that his grandfather, Jim Crow, was not a racist man, and this has nothing to do with racism or those laws. It was a man that has given a lot to this community, and he understands that, he told me he thought that eventually the whole road would be changed to the GC Crow, which is what we're going to vote on tonight. In my talks with Kathy Cooper, she is looking at having some sort of memorial, or she didn't know exactly how it would be at Alberta Banks Parks right there off of Raglan Road that would honor his legacy. And so she's working on that. But as I said in the previous meeting, that it's unfortunate the name is associated with what it is. And it's unfortunate that Jim Crow's legacy in this community is tied to that. But perception is reality. And when people come to this community, the perception is that we're a racist community. And that's just something that at this time I feel is not something we need. It's another thing in this world that can divide us. We've chosen to go with the GC Crow for the name of the road.
I just wanted to say that I think you guys are doing the right thing in changing this, even if it's just a small portion. It's a good start for the name change, and I think it sets a good example and a good tone that in this community we need to be inclusive and welcoming to everybody. It's not enough to be not racist anymore. We need to be anti-racist. So I applaud you guys for taking a look at this. And that's it. Have a good day.
Resign and resolve. Just keep moving on. Hold on and hold out. I hope you're gonna turn around.
Here, we'll call for the all on their side. All opposed.
This is something that has bothered me ever since I have come here in 2004. And it's just awful that we live in a time, 2020, that, we still have to be discussing this. This should have been something that should have never been brought to, the public. It should have been automatically just changed. But I'm ecstatic that it has changed. I'm hoping that now with Hall County that we can get the rest of the road changed. As I said, this is something that's very passionate for me. And I'm very happy to see that there were people that were here representing, Flowery Branch. So I'm very happy, and I'm very happy I came and spoke.
It was a no-brainer to me. It made perfect sense that it needed to change. While I absolutely understand the family's desire to have the name be what they believe most honored their family member, it doesn't change the fact that the name in and of itself is inherently, it's racially charged, and it's a long history of brings up lots of negative things for a lot of folks. And I just think in society today, keeping the name is going in the wrong direction than we need to go as a society. My question would be, how could they not have? Because the concept of Jim Crow has been around a lot longer than that.
I think that the council, the mayor, the politicians have a responsibility to listen to everyone, not just a particular demographic that's guiding their decisions. I think a lot of these decisions are made out of the appeal of additional tax dollars.
Have you personally reached out to the city with your thoughts and your opinions?
No, guilty. No, no. I guess you really don't have a voice, but we do vote. I would like to. I guess that's something we should probably do.
If you're making the decision for what's in the best interest of everybody, if you have two people that feel that way, and I've got 600 or 800 that have told me the other way, then yes, I listen to that and I get it and I understand their perspective. But at the end of the day, you've got to make the decision that's best for everybody.
A lot of what we hear from social media and the feedback that we get is from what I believe to be ill-informed folks who haven't taken time to really research and know what's going on, nor do they show up to the council meetings for an appropriate forum to speak about that. They have lots to say behind a keyboard, but nothing to say on a Thursday night at 6 o'clock.
South Hall is a growing place, and so the city, I believe right now, is about 8,000, 8,500 population. When I became mayor in 2010, I believe we were at 3,700, 3,750. And the projections are for the next 4 years to be possibly 12 to 14,000. So it's going to continue to grow. And I've had one person in the past tell me that it should stay like it was in the early 80s when it was 800 people in the city limits of Flowery Branch. And that's just not reality.
I think that change is a natural part of life, you know. To put your foot down and say nothing is ever going to change is unrealistic.
Unless there's action. And there has to be action. Then everything you're doing is just pointless.
So we can't leave it alone.
I feel that they made the right decision to change the name to G.C. Crow. I feel that it is a possible source of misunderstanding, and I think that they are making a good faith effort to clear up the misunderstanding.
I want to thank the city of Flowery Branch for setting precedents for Hull County to change the remaining of the road that is named Jim Crow presently to their side, it's the city of Flowery Branch side to, was it G.C. Crow Road, in hopes that that sets the precedent for Hull County to go ahead and move forward and have the name changed to correspond with what Flowery Branch has done. I just want to really commend them for doing that. So there's one less eyesore we have to look at when we drive down McEver Road. At least we can see that one side of the road has been, you know, modified and changed, but the other side, we're still working on it. And I want them to know that we will continue to pursue and persevere and come at them until that name is changed.
Census records show that there were at least a dozen property owners along this road during the same time that Mr. Crow owned his property. Maybe the road was named after him because his property was located at the furthest point, at the end of the road. However, if you study the history of this area, you will find that this road was here well before the settling of white men. It is well documented that the road that is now called Jim Crow was the start of the eastern beginning point of the old federal trading route established in 1805. The U.S. government paid for the right to build a road through Cherokee territory and made promises to several important chiefs as part of the process, including James Vann, who received ferry rights over the Chattahoochee River, later to be known as Williams Ferry. The federal road became an important route for Americans moving into and through Cherokee territory. Along the federal road, Cherokees and Christian missionaries, American farmers, tradesmen, postal riders delivering mail, and starting in the late 1820s, gold miners tried to learn how to coexist. In 1828, Georgia Governor John Forsyth signed an important bill saying that beginning in 1830, all Cherokees were subject to the laws of Georgia. The bill had the effect of saying there was in fact no Cherokee nation and no Cherokee government. In 1832, white men who lived in Georgia were eligible for the land lottery, and over 18,000 were given plots of what had been Cherokee land. The tragedy is that many Cherokees traveled the federal road as they left Georgia. What had been a road full of some promise, some contention, and much uncertainty became for them the first leg of the Trail of Tears. The Federal Road was the primary artery for American Indian removal in Georgia, and later was a route for Confederate and Union soldiers in the Civil War. Further consideration and recognition of the Federal Road in local, state, and federal government comprehensive planning and development in North Georgia is vital to ensure the protection of this resource. Much has changed from the beginnings of this small town of just a few hundred, starting with small family farms and businesses in the early 1900s to an ever-increasing population with the creation of Lake Lanier in the mid-1950s, added industries such as the world's leading manufacturer of chewing gum, the Wrigley's Company, in 1971, and King's Hawaiian in 2011, and the relocation of the Atlanta Falcons training camp in 2005. What is happening here is happening to small rural towns all over America, and with it comes a younger and more diverse group of residents. It will be up to them to decide the legacy of this quickly growing but still small southern town.
So lovely to be home in the Southland. My family on a big porch, magnolia on the breeze. Love and hospitality abounded. And I love my Georgia home in this southern life of ease.
How you doing today, sir?
I am happier than a tornado in a trailer park.
No, I ain't been around as long in life, but I know that picking at scabs has a nasty, nasty price. So come on, baby, it's time we all play nice. Once you come down off that cross, we ain't no Jesus Christ. So come on now, people, time to let it go. We got healing to do and seeds to sow. How can we expect any love to grow crushed beneath that southern cross? So come on down, we need the wood. We won't ever forget us if we ever could, but we got bridges to build for the greater good. So put away that southern cross.
I'm fine and dandy, like store-bought candy, and our finer and frog hair split 3 ways.